Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this second edition of Zimbabwe. Last week we had a conversation about Zimbabwe post-Robert Mugabe. Today we're having a conversation about Zimbabwe, a crisis of confidence, because the situation seems to be escalating. From the last couple of days that we had a conversation with Tinashe, and today we are honored to be hosting Discent Bajila, who is an activist, but also one of the youth development worker who has been part of the processes of the democratization trends within Zimbabwe, but also a political analyst in his own right. And today we are going to have a direct conversation about the crisis of confidence, what is happening in Zimbabwe right now, because the situation seems to be escalating every other day. So I have the honor today to be hosting Discent Collins Bajila, with whom I'm going to have this conversation. And let me now welcome officially Discent Bajila Collins to the conversation. Welcome, Mr. Discent.
Thank you, Emmy. Welcome to our listeners. I'm honored to be part of the conversation. I hope that we are going to share some insights on the situation in Zimbabwe, and we are going to assist one another in terms of what can be done moving forward. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Bajila. And I think as part of our tradition here, I wanted to first of all contextualize and give a situation as it is. There's a statement of cancellation of the meeting by the special envoys appointed by Cyril Ramaphosa that came from opposition and activists after they failed to meet the envoy. And parts of what came out of the statement are as follows. They say the state of crisis has been characterized by crackdown on citizens, abductions, arbitrary arrests of government critics, and political persecution of journalists. They also say the government in Harare is incapable of resolving these challenges because it lacks legitimacy. The deteriorating plight of Zimbabwean people, means that a political settlement is more urgent than before, and the opposition and activists pledge to continue engaging Mr. Mnangagwa in sincere dialogue until the national crisis is resolved. But I've also seen a report by the World Food Programme that says 60% of Zimbabwe's population is food insecure. And with the continued severe hunger expected in the coming 2020-2021 season, they will only reach 700,000 of the 1.8 recipients who need food aid. We have also seen that the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum has reported assaults against civilians, many of the victims being children and women, at checkpoints, at community boreholes, while some were even assaulted in their compounds, in their homes. Now, I'm also aware that the government of Zimbabwe is pushing to pass a constitutional amendment bill number 2, whose provisions would consolidate the power of the executive while limiting the independence of the judiciary, and no public consultation has been made. And I know that a couple of young activists were arrested when they tried to deliver a petition to the justice minister against the continued plans by government to push for this amendment bill number 2. And Discent, I know that you are also one of those activists in Zimbabwe who has been on the run because you are being hunted. They are looking for you, and I know that it has been tough for a lot of you that are trying to raise accountability questions on issues that are going on within Zimbabwe. What is it like for you, especially that you've been on the watch list for a long time? How is the situation for you, and how is the situation for other activists within Zimbabwe?
Well, thank you, Emmy, for the background and for the question. The situation has not been easy. When you have had 5 people visited at their homes, vandalized, beaten, threatened, And the part of the questions that these people are asked is that they need to tell these people who are beating them about my whereabouts. People have been visited in their homes at the middle of the night. Some have been captured in broad daylight, and they've been beaten. You see some pictures, and you speak to them, and the things that they tell you that happened to them, they are quite scary. And some of the things that they have to divulge is their knowledge of where I am. And this is quite scary. And for some days, it has created a situation whereby myself and my family, we are always traveling, we are always on the run, trying to see if we can get to that corner or to that one. Given the lockdown regulations, it's not easy to be hidden, given the situation that no one can skip, can easily leave the country at the present moment. It's also not easy. So we have been doing these rounds of moving from place A to place B, and doing this and that time and again. But at some point, it will be necessary for us to face the situation head on, make ourselves available, find out why exactly they are looking for us, and what exactly do they want, because there is nothing so far that we have done which is unconstitutional. Criticism of a government is a very constitutional right. A demonstration is provided for in terms of Section 59 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe. So none of these things are illegal. But the crackdown on activists in general and journalists, as was in the statement that you indicated, is quite severe. It's bad, particularly because if they do not find the people that they are looking for, they punish their relatives. We have seen it mainly in Bulawayo. You have got the editor of Zim Live, an online newspaper in Zimbabwe, Mtutu Zimatutu. They looked for him in his house east of Bulawayo. They failed to get him. They started beating up his relatives who were at his house, including his 22-year-old nephew. It's quite bad, the situation. You now have about 26 activists in Bulawayo who are either in hiding or have been beaten, or know that at any given point in time they will be visited. The pattern is the same. 18 people in Harare are facing these kinds of challenges. But also, what is important to note is that the bulk of these people who are being hunted are either in their late 20s to mid 30s, like some of us. So this kind of crackdown on young people by the government is becoming too systematic, and you do not know at what time they will stop.
And Decent. We've so I've also read a couple of reports of how the security apparatus is operating, how the state has been securitized, and everything else seems to be. It's the security that is in charge of dealing with everything, especially the crackdowns, the lockdowns in terms of enforcing them. What is civil society doing? What is the opposition doing? What are the political parties saying? Where are the party leaders at this moment when all this is happening to the population?
One thing that has made the space for opposition and the space for civil society shrink for operation is that we now have a government that does not lead through the legislative processes. It leads through statutory instruments. It leads through decrees. So you are now having statements being released each and every day about this thing without the involvement of parliament, without the involvement of the public in terms of consultations. So at every point in time, there is too little space for anyone to bring their views through around what is happening. The government is is very opaque. There is no transparency in any of the things that they are doing, particularly around issues of COVID-19. That is why they become too angry and too dangerous in response when they find out that in their opaqueness, someone has found what they are doing inside there, what they are doing in that black box where they are operating. That is why there have been these dangerous to people like Hopewell Chingono and Mtutu Matutu, who are journalists, and have found space inside there. As of the side of the opposition has tried. There has been efforts here and there to say, let us demonstrate, let us organize at community level. But at the same time, the people who have done these things, you have members of parliament getting arrested for organizing their own communities or communities within the provinces where they are members of parliament. You know about the arrest of Honorable Joanna Mamombe, the member of parliament for Harare West, together with their other colleagues in the MDC Alliance, Cecilia Chimbiri and Netsai Marova, when they were coming out of an event that the state believed that was a wrong event and that it should not have happened. So there is no point at which you can say the opposition is not doing anything, but the opposition is active, the opposition is doing its best, just that the state is brutal, the state will brook at nothing that looks like criticism of what it wants to do. So all these things are happening. You have got a councillor for Ward 4 in Maswingo Epen, a councillor called Frikura Uone, who has spent almost 2 weeks behind bars, and his crime is saying that he was undermining or he was insulting the president through a song that he was singing. These are kind of things that we are seeing, and it's quite bizarre that after the demise of Robert Mugabe and in the so-called new dispensation, you are still having people behind bars for those kinds of issues. It's bizarre.
Decent. I mean, you've told me that you and your family have to constantly be on the move to avoid arrest and all these torturous acts that are happening. Where do you get the inspiration to oppose a government like this? Where are you getting the inspiration to stand up against a government whose brutality you are very aware of?
Well, I have lived through the brutality of this government all my life. I was born after independence, and I have understood what it has done in communities. In the early 80s, you had Operation Kukura Hundi, where about 20,000, at least 20,000 people were murdered. And particularly, it was in the search for the former Vice President Joshua Nkomo, who came from the same district with me. So the fights of that government were even more terrible in the areas where I come from. But I have been raised by people who have fought this government and have faced it through that time. And the inspiration comes in believing that at some point, things are going to be better. At some point, we are going to defeat this system. And I have joined politics myself and become active, and the inspiration is the same. We need change. Zimbabwe is a better country. We are better than what we seem to be now. We have got the resources, we have got the manpower, and we have got the laws in place. Since the new constitution that was adopted in 2013, the situation in Zimbabwe could have improved if we had a government that was willing to implement the laws in place in letter and in spirit. So here are the challenges that exist, and those are the issues that inspire some of us every day to say a Zimbabwean deserves a better system, a Zimbabwean deserves a better government, and we are going to be part of those processes for as long as it is going to take.
And I mean, Decent, it's amazing how committed you are and how you've set your life to be part of this process of change. And but is it worth it? Is it worth? Is it worth, given the risk that comes to you, to your family, to your friends? Is this a worthy cause for you to be part of?
Look, it's one thing to do a cost-benefit analysis of involvement in a strike. But once you have done it, you will then realize that if you are not involved in a struggle, you are going eventually to be led by people who are going to steal from you, who are going to make sure that whatever you are entitled to, you do not get it. You are going to say, I want to go to school. When you go to school, you get your qualifications out of there, you are never going to get employed. You are going to say, okay, I'm going to start my business. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to stay away from politics. When you're an entrepreneur and you stay away from politics, you are going to be taxed to death. You are going to have all your earnings wiped out. We have Zimbabweans in the era of 2006, 7, and 8. You had people who had billions in their bank accounts, and tomorrow the government wakes up and says we're canceling 3 zeros from everyone's bank account. You accumulate your money again. By 2007, the government comes and says we are now canceling 6 zeros, to the extent that at the time we got into the inclusive government in Zimbabwe, 9 zeros had been cancelled out of people's monies. 9 zeros, that would be something like 900 million. 100 million of someone, from 100 million, we are left with $1 because 9 zeros are gone. So the situation is such that whether you like it or not, whether you participate or not, but the situation is going to force you at the end of the day to say enough is enough. And the more Zimbabweans stand up and realize that we are fast moving back to the era of cancelling zeros, they are going to stand up. We are now having our monies perishing every day. And if you do not stop this government from being in office, if you do not voice out, if you do not keep on fighting corruption as the likes of Mtutu Matutu and Hopel Chingono have done, we are going back to that situation. And if you say you want to do entrepreneurship, all your money is going to disappear as it used to. Recently, they also came up with some bizarre laws affecting entrepreneurs, banning the stock exchange, coming up with fixed rates of forex for foreign currency exchange, and all other bizarre things that they are doing. They will tell you that this money, we are now it's now 1:1 with the American dollar, and then you pile up your money. When your money is piled up, they will say we are now floating it, and suddenly all your American dollar goes away. So it's a bizarre situation, and you will be knowing that someone will have done wedging, and they are benefiting a lot out of it. And that is what is inspiring some of us to be part of this fight for as long as it is going to take.
And Discent, I mean, when recently when Mnangagwa fell out with Robert Mugabe, he went into exile. The army came in and removed President Mugabe, and Mnangagwa came back to take over. It was celebration in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe was excited that for after a long time there's going to be a new dispensation where Mnangagwa was going to be the head of state, and of course there were thoughts that there was going to be was going to lead a transitional process in which a new civilian dispensation would be put in place. I mean, what happened? The military seemed to have been for the people when they were disposing of Mugabe. When Mnangagwa came in, he seemed like he was for the people. He talked about bringing back businesses, opening up the country, and reigniting diplomatic relations with some of the countries that have had problems with Zimbabwe. What changed? What changed in the last 6 months that Mnangagwa has turned out to be somebody who is witch-hunting those who are asking critical questions, democratic questions on governance, accountability, and issues of procurement? What changed? It seemed like he was a good guy when he was coming in. His first presidential address was very inspirational to the rest of the continent. We all felt like Zimbabwe was back on track. We were all going to look up to this new country with a new president after the reign of Robert Mugabe. What went wrong? What happened? What changed?
Well, when you have an animal that likes playing in the mud, you might put lipstick on it, but at some point it will rush back to the mud and the lipstick will become of no use. What you have seen happening in Zimbabwe, particularly over the past 6 months, is a return to the 1980 kind of situation. But you will understand that when I spoke to you about Operation Kukuraundi that killed people, at that point in time, Emmerson Mnangagwa was the Minister of State Security. The general who just died last week, Perence Shiri, who was now Minister of Agriculture, was the commander then of the brigade that executed that mass murder of our people. When he was about to move from one brigade to another, the man who is now vice president of Zimbabwe became brigadier also of the same, and they actually led. The one was leading one brigade, the other was leading 5 brigade, and they did that operation in Matabeleland together. So these are the people that Mugabe was using. They were his tools of committing violence and heinous acts. And now they are in charge of the state, and the situation continues. All that drama of 2017 of trying by all means to look like they are in support of the people eventually was going to fade away, because what they do not want is criticism. What they do not want is alternative views. That has been a uniform situation that they worked in under Mugabe. And some of us have always said, you can be anything to the people of Zimbabwe, but whatever that thing you are, do not be worse than Mugabe. And we are seeing a situation whereby fast by the ticking of the clock every day, we are seeing a situation of people who are worse than Mugabe. Because one of the things that Mugabe did was to focus on people who were really his contemporaries, who were really seemingly taking away a real power from him. You have got young people like Namatai Kwekweza. At the age of 21, she has seen the walls of prisons several times for criticizing government. You have got Hida Mpambwa in Kariba. She has seen the walls of prisons for criticizing a government at a tender age of less than 25. And you are seeing that indeed we now have a system that is worse than Mugabe. So the hope that they romanticized people towards around 2017 has gone, because they've become the original themselves, the originals of Operation Kukuraundi, the originals of Operation Murambatsvina. And now they are fusing themselves with Operation Sunrise and the other criminal acts of the government of Robert Mugabe, which we are seeing them bringing back to the current fault. So there is nothing new. These people are becoming themselves. These people are becoming who they've always been. The masks that they were putting on of being a government that is willing to engage, that mask has fallen off, and it has fallen off voluntarily because they have removed that mask themselves.
And Discent, I mean, I know that some of your neighbors like South Africa have real goodwill in trying to help in this process. I've seen that the African Union Chairman Faki has put out a statement asking the government to be mindful of the human rights of its citizens. And I've also seen that, I know that you have a couple of activists who actually are in exile in South Africa, in Botswana, and some of the neighboring countries. There seem to be some goodwill from the neighboring countries to protect, to help create a haven for some of the people that are uncomfortable in Zimbabwe. What is the situation now? The international community, the embassies, what are they saying? What are your neighboring countries saying about the situation in Zimbabwe right
now? We have not heard much from governments around, particularly our Southern Africa Development Community or SADC region. We have heard statements from South Africa, and the President of South Africa, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, spoke of challenges that are facing the people of Zimbabwe in his statement. He has sent an envoy to come and understand what is happening in Zimbabwe. But before we talk about what has happened to the envoy itself, we need to understand that by position, whatever challenges face Zimbabwe, South Africa is likely to suffer more, to feel them more than any other neighbor we have, particularly because of historical relations between Zimbabwe and South Africa. There are so many Zimbabweans who have natural relatives in South Africa. You have also had this movement between Zimbabwe and South Africa since way back in the 1940s. So when challenges happen, whatever challenges Zimbabweans face, particularly economic challenges, they become economic refugees in South Africa. And sometimes the South African government can try by all means it can, but it cannot completely flush out to do that. More so also on the political front, Zimbabweans also easily move to South Africa to get political refuge. Botswana is the second country also that is affected by that, or that is likely to feel the pain of Zimbabweans. And yesterday we saw a caucus of opposition political parties in the Botswana parliament releasing a statement condemning what is happening. And what was also interesting about the statement is that it seems that the opposition in Botswana is properly informed of what is happening in Zimbabwe, because their statement was like it has been written by somebody who feels physically the issues that are happening in Zimbabwe. So this is what is happening. The envoy that President Ramaphosa sent to Zimbabwe was meant to deliver the message of Pretoria to Harare and collect some messages from Harare and deliver to Pretoria, perhaps with the view of establishing a formal process of mediating or creating dialogue between various stakeholders in Zimbabwe. But what we saw happening was that the ZANU-PF delegation met the envoy and told them that now that you have met us, you can go back to your country. There is no one that you are going to meet here. So you had other stakeholders that were still waiting for the envoy. They were only called by the envoy to say, we have cancelled all the meetings that we were supposed to have with you. We are going back to our country. So this is a situation also of a government that after doing all this to its citizens, it is raising a middle finger to its neighbors who are trying by all means to help. We don't know to what extent South Africa will continue to carry the brunt of challenges facing Zimbabwe, because whatever challenges that Zimbabwe has, South Africa is going to follow them. What could work is a situation whereby you have talks in Zimbabwe around resolving the situation, talks that should be underwritten by SADC, talks that could be underwritten by the African Union, talks that could be underwritten by the United Nations. But you are still going to have challenges with some countries that will come and say there is no problem in Zimbabwe. You foresee that if you take this issue to the United Nations, China will say there is no problem in Zimbabwe. Russia will say there is no problem in Zimbabwe, because now you have got a move also of those countries, rogue countries in Eastern Europe, your Belarus, your Kazakhstan, your Russia, all being part of the network that is looting Zimbabwe dry at the present moment. And they are going to support that kind of thing. If you come to within Africa, you are going to have some states, possibly your own. The Ugandan government is unlikely to say there is a problem in Zimbabwe, is unlikely to support anything. So you are also having this network of Zimbabwe, of African and global rogue states that are likely to be in support of what is happening in Zimbabwe. And the resolution is unlikely to come anytime soon. But we are going to be in the fight for as long as it is going to take.
And I mean, this said, if okay, let's hypothetically say that yes, AU or SADC decides to agree to have these conversations. You're also going to have a question of who mediates. Who is the mediator? Who can we trust to be a neutral party to this conversation? Are you looking at former presidents? Are you looking at former heads of state that can be mediators? Do you have names in mind? Because I think this could be a good conversation to start throwing around names so that these people are aware that, you know, Zimbabwe needs you to be part of this conversation.
Look, there is a serious wave of mistrust in Zimbabwe, mistrust with so many people, mistrust with Asia, mistrust with Western Europe, mistrust with Eastern Europe, mistrust with former leaders of African governments. But we have not tried a former judge. We have not tried a retired chief justice of a country. You have got some judges here in Africa and abroad who have done very well in terms of saving their countries, in terms of pushing for proper developmental states. and you are looking forward to a situation where, if, for example, if President Ramaphosa himself could have appointed a delegation led by a retired judge that could come into Zimbabwe. You have had a situation in South Africa themselves where there are talks that were led by a reverend, by then Archbishop Desmond Tutu. So you are looking forward to that, the people with that kind of clout. But we have also had some presidents in Africa who have not been at the storm, at the face of political storms. You have got retired President Abdoulaye Wade, who did quite well for the people in his country. You've also had quite a number of former Ghanaian presidents in West Africa who have done quite well. You have quite a number, but you are going to have these kind of diggings into their history, into their past, in terms of things that they've done while they were in power, and it might complicate those kinds of issues. In Kenya, you also have former presidents who are there. I wouldn't say about President Daniel Arap Moi, perhaps President Mwai Kibaki, who had come later. But also next, within your neighborhood, you have got a former President Jakaya Kikwete, who is very much aware of the situation in Zimbabwe, former president of Tanzania. President Kikwete was chairperson of the African Union at the time we signed the global political agreement in 2009. He's very much aware of the situation in Zimbabwe and could be very useful in the resolution of this discourse. So in short, you are looking forward to a situation whereby you are infusing people, former president, people from the clergy, and the people from the judiciary. But above all, it's not possible at the present moment to get an internal solution in Zimbabwe, because internally it's not possible to find someone who is not aligned to any side, who is neither aligned to the MDC, nor aligned to ZANU-PF, nor aligned to civil society interests, and that person is genuinely so. We do not have those kinds of people in Zimbabwe, and that is why we are looking for a conversation or a dialogue that is underwritten from outside, with the caliber of people that I have mentioned in mind for mediation.
And I mean, those are interesting, but in the statements, you don't seem to, the statements coming out of the activists, they don't seem to very clearly mention who needs to be on the table. But I think you give interesting pointers. I mean, East Africa has a couple of retired chief justices who would be of help. Now you've mentioned Kikwete and a couple of other former heads of state that could be helpful. But is there political will? Is there political will within the government of President Emmerson Mnangagwa to accept a dialogue and a conversation about what is going on? Is he comfortable bringing people from outside to mediate this conversation, or he wants it to be on his terms within the country and at a time of his calling?
Look, from what you look at now in terms of how they are speaking, President Mnangagwa's government is interested in investors. They're interested in people who are going to come here as if they want to settle the political challenges facing Zimbabwe, yet they are coming here for business purposes. So people without business interests and stuff like that seem not to be getting a good welcome in Zimbabwe. What you are looking at is a government that is interested in talk shows, your public speaking competitions, your praise and worship moments, not in-depth dialogue. And the president has created these kind of platforms where people talk endlessly without a solution. You have got something called the Presidential Advisory Council, which is basically composed of business people who would ordinarily oppose the president, but are being kept at bay so that they don't get an opportunity to oppose him, because time and again they have coffee and tea with him. You also have another group called the Political Actors Dialogue, POLAD, which is also created to have opposition political leaders who would ordinarily be up in arms against the president as something wrong happens, but they are no longer doing it because time and again at that political actors dialogue platform, they have coffee and tea with the president, and they get per diems, they get allowances here and there. The president, through Pollard, creates commissions. You have got this International Relations Commission, you have got this Economic Commission, this Legislative Commission, and they've got these toys that he gives to these other political actors. And therefore, they get comfortable by playing with those toys every day while not addressing the issues that are affecting Zimbabweans on a daily basis. So there is no political will for dialogue in Zimbabwe, at least from the issues that I have mentioned before. But more importantly, from the treatment of the envoy that came from South Africa yesterday, where the envoy is looking forward to bringing so many groups on the table and understanding their prognosis of the issue. But the envoy is told that, no, you have spoken to us, you can go, it's enough. So that shows the extent of lack of political will. And what is important is that the world out there must continue to push, because the challenges of Zimbabwe always have a spillover effect, and they have a spillover effect particularly to South Africa, Botswana, and Zambia, and to a minor extent Mozambique, which shares our western border, but has a language challenge that they speak Portuguese and we speak English, and not much of Zimbabweans will always move to Mozambique on a permanent basis. But of course, some move there on a temporary basis to do economic refugee here and there. So there is no political will for dialogue, at least from the position of government, but the will needs to continue pushing because the people of Zimbabwe need help.
Yes, so very clearly, economic will doesn't see, political will doesn't exist. Does the social will exist? What do the people of Zimbabwe want? Are they interested in a conversation? Are they saying the president needs to talk to the opposition and talk to the activists? Is there the social will amongst the Zimbabwean people to make sure there's a conversation about what is going on?
Well, the creation of these charades, like the Presidential Advisory Council and the Political Actors Dialogue, Pollard, is basically a response to the people's social pressure for dialogue, because the people want dialogue. Then the president has then created these toys, the Presidential Advisory Council, where he meets compliant business people, the Political Actors Dialogue, where he meets compliant opposition. They are charades created by the president in response to the people's need for dialogue. The people want political leaders to sit down, discuss, and find solutions to the country. The bickering that happens in parliament, the people are not interested in it. The insults that leaders trade on social media, the insults that leaders trade through letters, through the national broadcaster, and so forth and so forth. The people are not interested in that. The people are interested in leaders sitting down, discussing, finding solutions to Zimbabwe, and moving forward despite their political differences. Unfortunately, there is no will, particularly on the side of the president and the ruling party, for this kind of situation to be created. The president wants people to come and discuss in his terms, in his agenda, at his place, at his time, to assist him, not necessarily to the people of Zimbabwe. And more so, the discussion should be centered on hiding the issues that the president and the
Discent, we hear you that the lack of the political will, there's clearly a social will by the people who want a conversation to go on. And we don't know how long this is going to take. We hopefully that a solution will be found very soon. And I know that activists like you who are always on the move to make sure that you don't get arrested and get detained, and your family is always in constant danger. As we wrap up this conversation, how long are you going to do this? How long are you going to be on the run? You earlier talked about eventually coming out and being or putting your face out there to the struggle. How long can you continue being on the run? And what is the message to other activists? Of course, you have a lot of other young people who don't have the courage to do what you're doing, other young people who would like to join this conversation. of asking the hard question. What is your advice to them, and how long are you going to do the running? And when do you come out of this shell?
Look, we're not interested in being on the run. We're not interested in being in high. Interested because Zimbabwe is our country. We live with so much.
Discent, are you still there?
We wish that it could be better. It has got the first people to be on the run, and certainly we are not the last. Some of the first people to be on the run with respect to political challenges in Zimbabwe, they include former Vice President Joshua Nkomo himself. He had to flee the country through unlawful means and found himself in London, in the United Kingdom. We are looking forward to the situation calming down. We are looking forward to the situation getting better. We are looking forward to things can return back to normal, and we can be in a position to save our families, to save Zimbabwe, and to develop well. In conversation with some others who still need help, and you find to stop the fight, to stop the activism, to stop the call for dialogue, to stop the call for to stop corruption in Zimbabwe. So I think that this fight that the young people are involved in, this fight that civil society is involved in, this fight that opposition in its various formations is involved in, is it is going to be there for quite a long time. But the challenge is that, in my view, you might have disgruntlements from people in uniformed forces, and this might result in another coup. And that is quite, as you would know, that those who have started security will always tell you that one coup, this one that we had in 2017 might begot another, and that will be quite unfortunate. But as we round up, I would say to the young people of Zimbabwe, continue the fight, continue determined. You have no other country besides Zimbabwe, and you have got a legitimate right to fight for. If you need to demonstrate, Section 59 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe allows you to do so. But after all things that you will have done, you must be aware that there is a problem here in Zimbabwe, and that problem must be fixed. Part of the issues include making sure that there is currently a coronavirus outbreak happening. If you are going to do your activism, do it in line with the World Health Organization regulations, and make sure that you practice social distancing, you are keeping yourself safe. But above all, some of us are suspected to have been printing the ZANU-PF must go masks, and at the right time, when the situation settles down, we are going to make sure that those masks are really printed. At the present moment, we do not have them, and when we get a chance, we are going to have them, and we are going to distribute them, because we believe that change lies after the demise of ZANU-PF.
Thank you, Vincent. Discent. Finally, a last word to the government of Emmerson Mnangagwa, a last word to SADC and the neighboring countries, and Zimbabweans in diaspora.
Okay, thank you so much. I will start with the Zimbabweans in diaspora. Zimbabweans in diaspora, we appeal to you to continue supporting the civil society and the political activists in Zimbabwe who are wanted So far, you have been doing very well. We thank you for what you have done. We request that you continue doing that and be creative as much as you can about the system, about the situation. So far, you have done well, and you can continue to do better. But above all, whenever you get an opportunity to come home, please get registered to vote. We will fight at some point. We are going to escalate the fight for diaspora vote so that Zimbabweans in the diaspora can be allowed to air their views, because the challenges that we face, you have to bear their brand all the time when you have to take care of yourselves wherever you are and your families back home, while other people do not have the burden of doing those things in turn. To the regional and international community, we appeal to you to understand that yes, Zimbabweans' lives matter. When we talk about Zimbabweans' lives matter, we are talking about the old woman in Cholocho whose money is being wiped away every day, every second. We are talking about the people of Bulawayo in Luveve who have challenges because the currency that they are paying the city council, the municipalities can no longer afford to give them clear and clean water, and hence they have to suffer communicable diseases like that should never be coming. When we are saying Zimbabweans' lives matter, we are talking about people having the right to exercise their freedom of speech, their freedom of conscience, their freedom of assembly, and their right to freedom of association. These are the issues that we are talking about. We are not talking about people needing to take arms against a government. We are talking about a government that takes arms against its people. And this is what we are talking about when we are talking about the Zimbabweans' lives matter. No Zimbabwean is interested in taking arms against its government. It is the government that is interested in taking arms against its people. That is what we are saying to the international community to understand what we are talking about when we are saying Zimbabweans' lives matter. Coming down to the government itself, it is important to climb down from the brinkmanship that is currently at space. It will not work. At some point, something will have to give. The people of Zimbabwe have lost everything. They have lost their income. They have lost their dignity. They have lost their jobs. They have lost their relatives, and they have nothing more to lose. It is time that the government gives in and allows for sanity to prevail. Make sure that parliament is allowed to do its job. Make sure that the judiciary is allowed to do its job without interference, so that at the end of the day, things could become better. Devolve power to local communities and allow local institutions to be strong so that they can work and develop our economy in our diversity and in the manner that each community believes that it should be developed. That could be my parting shot to the government of Zimbabwe, to the international community, and to Zimbabweans in the diaspora.
Thank you very much, Discent Bajila, and I'm also happy that you've advised those that are doing the demonstrations to keep following the World Health Organization guidelines on social distancing, washing their hands, sanitizing, and putting on masks when they're in public. I think that is very important for all those that are part of the activism within Zimbabwe. I also implore you to keep taking care, making sure that you don't fall in trouble, but keep speaking truth to power, because I think that is good for all of us. You're setting precedents that are going to inspire the rest of young people in this continent to believe that they can be part of peaceful change. And I'm also happy that you've stated it very clearly that you are not interested in taking up arms against the state. Your interest is having a peaceful conversation and a dialogue on how to improve Zimbabwe. And of course, for those in the diaspora, the Zimbabweans in diaspora, we applaud you for the courage to keep supporting those on the ground. And to the Zimbabwean government, we hope that they have listened and heard you loud and clear, that the people of Zimbabwe are only interested in a better country. They are not interested in arms. They are not interested in fighting the government. And we need the political will coming out of the presidency of Mr. Emerson Mnangagwa to make sure that Zimbabwe becomes better than what it is. Thank you very much, Discent Bajila, for being part of this conversation. And I know you're living a risky life, even accepting to have this conversation with us and being able to share your life story, to share the realities on the ground. But also, I'm very happy that you've been very specific on telling us that there's a lot of mistrust within the country, and that if there was any kind of external help, it would be nice to have a mix of former heads of state, judicial officers, former chief justices, and also have religious leaders as part of the conversation to bring Zimbabwe to where it needs to be. Thank you very much for your time, and I wish you a splendid week ahead of you.
Thank you so much, Emmy.
Okay, then. Have a nice day. And that was Discent Bajila, who is an activist in Zimbabwe, constantly on the move to avoid arrest, but also gives very interesting recommendations on how the impasse right now can be sorted. He proposes external involvement in terms of people who would be on the dialogue table. He has mentioned former presidents. He also mentioned specifically Jakaya Kikwete, Abdullahi Wade, but also people like President Mahama from West Africa, but also retired chief justices and religious leaders to be part of this conversation. He has also emphasized that all young people that are part of the activism and the demonstration on the streets should be conscious and follow the World Health Organization advice on social distancing, sanitizing, putting on masks, and washing your hands as often as possible. And to the government, he has pushed them to open up. Let's have some political will to have this conversation so that the people of Zimbabwe get what they deserve. And we hope that the message is loud and clear, and the international community has also been implored to be part of the conversation and implore the government to open up and listen to dissenting voices. And of course, from us, we have respect for young people who speak truth to power, who are willing to put their lives on the line to be able to push governments to listen to the will of the people. And we are very honored to have hosted Discent Bajila, who is within Zimbabwe, but constantly on the move to avoid arrest because of the issues they raise against the state, the rampant corruption, especially when it came to procurement of personal protective equipment to deal with COVID-19 in Zimbabwe. This is the second conversation in a row that we have had about Zimbabwe, but we think it is important because of the escalating situation and the new developments that are happening every other week in Zimbabwe. And we hope that these conversations are going to be of help in helping the people in Zimbabwe and the diaspora to understand what kind of solutions need to be put on the table, what kind of conversations need to happen to be able to make this the situation in Zimbabwe get back to normal. But also, we implore the government to release the over 60 activists that have been arrested for asking questions, for holding government accountable. We thank you all very much that have managed to be part of this conversation on Zimbabwe, a crisis of confidence. When Mnangagwa came into power, people thought that it was going to be different, but it seems like nothing has changed. This conversation, hosted by me, Emmy Otim, is powered by the Christian Democratic International Center, which is a party foundation based in Stockholm, running programs in Eastern Europe, Latin America, and East Africa. We thank you all very much for following the conversation, and let's gear up for the next conversation that we hope will be explosive, educative, but also helpful to the rest of the continent. Thank you all very much for being part of this conversation, and I wish you all a splendid day. Have a nice day.